Echoes of Silence, a heart-touching emotional story during the Hiroshima attack. Hiroshima in the early hours of August 6, 1945, was a city unaware of the impending catastrophe. The air was thick with the summer heat, and the cicadas' relentless song filled the morning with a familiar, comforting hum. Aiko, a young nurse at the Hiroshima Red Cross Hospital, started her day like any other, blissfully unaware of the seismic shift her life was about to undergo. Aiko's morning routine was filled with the usual bustle. She made her way through the hospital's corridors, attending to patients, offering smiles, and providing comfort. The war had taken its toll on everyone, and the hospital was no exception. Supplies were scarce, and the staff was overworked, yet Aiko's unwavering dedication to her patients shone through. In a quieter moment, Aiko stole a glance at Takeshi, a young doctor she had grown fond of over the past few months. They shared a silent understanding, a budding connection that brought a spark of hope and normalcy in these tumultuous times. Takeshi, with his calm demeanor and gentle eyes, was a source of strength for Aiko. Their brief conversations in the midst of the chaos were moments of respite. As the morning progressed, a sense of foreboding seemed to hang in the air. There were reports of increased American air activity, but Hiroshima had been relatively untouched by the bombings that had ravaged other cities. The general consensus was that the city was not a target, perhaps due to its cultural significance and the presence of a large civilian population. Aiko's mind wandered to her family, who lived in a small house on the outskirts of the city. She often thought about the future, about the possibility of a life beyond the war, a life where she could pursue her dreams and build a family of her own. The clock struck 8:15 a.m. Aiko was in the middle of changing a patient's bandages when an intense flash of light filled the room. The brilliance was blinding, more intense than anything she had ever experienced. Instinctively, she shielded her eyes, a scream catching in her throat as the world around her exploded into chaos. The hospital shook violently, windows shattered, and the ground trembled. The force of the blast threw Aiko against the wall, knocking the wind out of her. She struggled to comprehend what had just happened, her mind reeling from the shock. The sound of the explosion was deafening, a thunderous roar that seemed to emanate from the very core of the earth. When Aiko managed to get to her feet, the scene before her was one of utter devastation. The once sterile and orderly hospital was now a nightmarish landscape of debris and destruction. Patients lay injured and screaming, the air thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning. She forced herself to move, to help, to do anything she could to alleviate the suffering around her. In the midst of the chaos, Aiko found Takeshi, bloodied and dazed but alive. Together, they navigated the wreckage, pulling survivors from the rubble, administering what aid they could with their limited resources. The hospital, which had once been a beacon of hope, was now a grim testament to the horrors of war. As the day wore on, the true extent of the devastation became apparent. Hiroshima, the city Aiko had called home, was in ruins. Buildings had been flattened, fires raged uncontrollably, and the streets were filled with the cries of the wounded and the dying. The atomic bomb, a weapon of unprecedented destructive power, had unleashed its fury upon the unsuspecting city, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. In the face of this unimaginable horror, Aiko's resolve hardened. She vowed to do everything in her power to help her fellow survivors, to provide comfort and care amidst the suffering. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, filled with unimaginable challenges, but Aiko knew that she could not give up. For the sake of her loved ones, for the memory of those lost, and for the hope of a better future, she would endure. The days following the bombing were a blur of pain and exhaustion. Hiroshima, once a bustling city, was now a wasteland of rubble and ash. The survivors, dazed and injured, wandered through the wreckage, searching for loved ones and any semblance of normalcy. Aiko, along with the other medical staff, worked tirelessly to tend to the injured, their own grief and trauma set aside in the face of overwhelming need. The hospital had sustained significant damage, but it remained one of the few structures still standing. Makeshift triage areas were set up in the surrounding open spaces, and the influx of wounded seemed never-ending. Supplies were critically low, and the sheer scale of the injuries was beyond anything Aiko had ever encountered. Burns, lacerations, radiation sickness, each case was more severe than the last. Aiko and Takeshi became an inseparable team, their bond strengthened by the shared trauma. Together, they faced the unimaginable, drawing strength from each other as they navigated the hellish landscape. Every moment was a test of their endurance and compassion, their medical training pushed to its limits. Amidst the devastation, stories of survival and heroism emerged. Aiko met people who had risked their lives to save others, who had dug through the rubble with their bare hands to free those trapped beneath. She saw the best and worst of humanity, the raw, unfiltered reality of what it meant to be human in the face of such overwhelming adversity. One night, as they took a rare moment to rest, Aiko and Takeshi found themselves sitting on the remnants of a wall, the cityscape before them illuminated by the eerie glow of fires still burning in the distance. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of charred wood, a constant reminder of the destruction that surrounded them. "Aiko," Takeshi began, his voice hoarse from days of shouting and the inhalation of smoke. "Do you ever wonder why we were spared? Why we're still here, while so many others are not?" Aiko looked at him, her heart heavy with the weight of his question. She had asked herself the same thing countless times. "I don't know, Takeshi. I don't know if there is an answer. But I do know that we have to keep going. We have to help those who are still here, who still need us." Takeshi nodded, his eyes reflecting the same determination that burned within Aiko. "You're right. We can't give up. Not now." The following day, a sense of grim determination settled over the survivors. They began to organize themselves, forming small groups to search for food, water, and medical supplies. The sense of community, of shared purpose, was a beacon of hope amidst the desolation. People who had lost everything came together, their collective will to survive and rebuild driving them forward. Aiko continued her work, her body running on sheer willpower and adrenaline. Each life she saved, each moment of comfort she provided, reinforced her resolve. She knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she also knew that she was not alone. The spirit of Hiroshima, the unbreakable will of its people, would guide her through the darkest of times. As the days turned into weeks, the enormity of the task at hand became ever clearer. The scale of the destruction was staggering, the loss of life incomprehensible. Yet, amidst the rubble, the first signs of recovery began to appear. Small shoots of greenery poked through the ash, a symbol of nature's resilience and a reminder that life, in all its tenacity, would find a way. Aiko and Takeshi, along with their fellow survivors, faced each new day with a mixture of hope and sorrow. The memories of those lost weighed heavily on their hearts, but the promise of a future, however uncertain, gave them the strength to persevere. They had been through the worst, and though the scars would remain, they were determined to rebuild, to honor the memory of those who had perished, to create a new beginning from the ashes of the past. The weeks following the bombing tested the limits of human endurance. Hiroshima, once vibrant and full of life, was now a city of ghosts. The survivors, though physically present, were haunted by the memories of the devastation, their spirits scorched as deeply as the earth beneath their feet. Aiko, like many others, grappled with the dual burdens of grief and duty, her every action driven by a fierce determination to help her fellow survivors. The hospital had become a central hub for relief efforts. Medical teams from other parts of Japan, and even from overseas, began to arrive, bringing much-needed supplies and expertise. The influx of aid provided a glimmer of hope, but the challenges remained immense. Radiation sickness, a new and terrifying affliction, claimed lives at an alarming rate. The medical staff, including Aiko and Takeshi, worked around the clock, their faces etched with exhaustion and sorrow. One particularly harrowing case involved a young girl named Yuki, no older than 5, who had been found wandering the streets, severely burned and alone. Her family had perished in the blast, and she was brought to the hospital in a state of shock. Aiko took Yuki under her wing, determined to provide the child with the care and comfort she so desperately needed. Yuki's recovery was slow and painful. Her burns required constant attention, and the psychological trauma was evident in her silent, wide-eyed stares. Aiko spent every free moment with her, reading stories, singing lullabies, and offering gentle reassurances. The bond that formed between them was a source of strength for both, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human capacity for love and compassion endured. Amidst the relentless work, Aiko found herself grappling with her own emotional turmoil. The loss of friends, colleagues, and patients weighed heavily on her heart. The city she had once known was unrecognizable, and the future seemed shrouded in uncertainty. Yet, in the face of all this, she refused to succumb to despair. She drew strength from the resilience of those around her, from the determination etched on the faces of the survivors. Takeshi, too, was a pillar of support. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of shared trauma, deepened with each passing day. They found solace in each other, their moments together a brief respite from the chaos. In the evenings, after the relentless pace of the day had slowed, they would sit together, sharing stories, fears, and hopes for the future. One night, as they sat on the hospital steps, the distant sound of a harmonica drifted through the air. Aiko closed her eyes, allowing the music to wash over her, a balm for her weary soul. Takeshi reached for her hand, his touch a silent promise of unwavering support. "Aiko," he said softly, "we will get through this. Together." Aiko squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know, Takeshi. We have to. For everyone who didn't make it, for Yuki, for the future." The weeks turned into months, and the slow process of rebuilding began. The city, though scarred, showed signs of life. Makeshift shelters were erected, and the community came together to clear the rubble and rebuild homes. The resilience of Hiroshima's people was a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Their determination to rise from the ashes a beacon of hope for the future. Aiko continued her work, her every action driven by the memory of those lost and the promise of a better tomorrow. The bonds she had formed, the lives she had touched, and the strength she had found within herself were all testaments to the power of love and resilience. Though the scars of the past would never fade, they served as a reminder of the strength that lay within the human heart. As the city slowly healed, so too did Aiko. She found solace in the small victories, in the smiles of the survivors, in the growing bond with Takeshi, and in the unbreakable spirit of the people of Hiroshima. Together, they faced the future, carrying the memory of the past with them, determined to honor the legacy of those who had perished and to build a world where such devastation would never be repeated. The process of rebuilding Hiroshima was a monumental task. The city, once a symbol of culture and community, was now a landscape of rubble and ruin. Yet, amidst the destruction, the survivors forged ahead, determined to reclaim their lives and their city. Aiko, Takeshi, and the rest of the hospital staff played a crucial role in this effort, their medical expertise and unwavering dedication providing a foundation of hope and healing. The influx of international aid brought new resources and personnel, each group contributing to the massive relief efforts. The once overwhelmed hospital now had additional supplies, and the medical teams worked in shifts to ensure continuous care for the wounded. Aiko marveled at the solidarity and compassion of people from around the world, united in their mission to help Hiroshima rise from the ashes. One of the most significant challenges was addressing the long-term effects of radiation exposure. Many survivors exhibited symptoms of radiation sickness, a cruel and insidious enemy that claimed lives slowly and painfully. Aiko and Takeshi, along with their colleagues, worked tirelessly to provide treatment, though their knowledge of this new affliction was limited. Aiko's bond with Yuki deepened as the months passed. The young girl, though scarred physically and emotionally, began to show signs of recovery. Her burns healed slowly, and her eyes, once vacant and haunted, now held a glimmer of hope. Aiko's presence was a source of comfort for Yuki, and their relationship became a symbol of the resilience and healing that permeated the city. One afternoon, while tending to Yuki, Aiko noticed a small group of children playing in a nearby courtyard. Their laughter, a rare and precious sound, brought a smile to her face. She watched as they played a makeshift game of tag, their joy a stark contrast to the devastation around them. Aiko and Takeshi found solace in these moments of normalcy. They spent their rare free time exploring the remnants of the city, finding beauty in the smallest of details, a flower blooming amidst the rubble, a child's drawing on a wall, the resilience of a community determined to rebuild. Their commitment to each other provided a foundation of strength as they navigated the complexities of the post-bombing world. They faced numerous challenges, from the ongoing medical crises to the bureaucratic hurdles of rebuilding a city. The fragments of the shattered city slowly came together, each piece a testament to the indomitable spirit of its people. Aiko, Takeshi, and the countless others who had survived and persevered were the heart and soul of Hiroshima's rebirth. They were driven by the memory of those who had perished and the promise of a future built on compassion, resilience, and hope. Their journey was far from over, but they faced each day with a renewed sense of purpose and an unbreakable bond. The fragments of the shattered city slowly came together, each piece a testament to the indomitable spirit of its people. Aiko, Takeshi, and the countless others who had survived and persevered were the heart and soul of Hiroshima's rebirth. They carried the weight of the past with them, honoring the memory of those lost while forging a path toward a brighter future. If you like the story, like, subscribe and share.